This is the plaintiff, Laura Burns. She says the defendants, her aunt and her lover, agreed to watch her Chihuahua Disco. And when she was ready to pick him up, they told her no. No? What does that mean? What it means is they refused to give her her beloved pet back. She's emotionally attached to Disco. Can't believe the defendants are trying to get away with stealing her dog. And she's suing for $5,000, the cost of the dog and loss of future breeding income. These are the defendants, Tina Petro and Chris Robinson. They say the plaintiff went to rehab and they watched her dog. When she got kicked out of rehab for bad behavior, she told them to just keep Disco because she was going to have to enter a halfway house. She never once called and asked about Disco. She never gave them a dime for his care. And as far as they're concerned, Disco's now a part of their family and they're not giving him back. They're accused of having Disco fever. The defendants have filed a countersuit for $537.50 for vet bills, shots, and dog food.
All parties, please raise your right hand. Litigants have been sworn, Your Honor.
Thank you, Douglas.
You're welcome.
Okay, Laura Burns,
Yes.
You are suing Tina Petro and Chris Robinson. Tina is your aunt?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. For $5,000, a statutory maximum in your state for refusing to return your dog after she was temporarily caring for it.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. 200 of that for the cost of the dog and 4,800 of it for loss of future income because they spayed the dog and for emotional distress. All right. You are counterclaiming against her $537.50 for money that you spent taking care of the dog if I order you to return the dog because you want to be recompensed for money that you're out while she did not have the dog. What happened to put you in a situation where they were taking care of your dog?
Well, the first time I came to a realization that I had an eating disorder and a substance abuse problem.
A what? An
Eating disorder. Yes, I'm a recovering bulimic. I checked myself in voluntarily to an inpatient treatment center when I returned to Orlando.
Wait, during the first time, you mean the first time you asked them to take care of the dog?
Yes, correct.
Okay. The name of the dog is?
Disco.
Disco. Okay.
Yes.
Go ahead.
When I left treatment, I came back and they gave him back to me, no problem. When I returned home, I did relapse on my eating disorder and substance abuse.
What's the substance?
Marijuana and alcohol.
Okay.
I checked myself back in to treatment on December 12th. I made an agreement with Tina and Chris when I dropped the dog off at their house that I would complete treatment and move into a halfway house. And once I was out of that halfway house and felt that I was stable enough, then I would be able to get my dog back.
Okay. Now, you get out of the halfway house when?
I moved out of the halfway house July.
Okay. And
Mid-July.
under what circumstances do you leave the halfway house?
I left voluntarily because I was struggling with my eating disorder.
Go on.
I moved into an apartment with somebody who's also in recovery, and they've been in recovery for multiple years. And then at the beginning of January, purchased my own house. I work a full-time job. I work 48 hours a week.
Okay. And when is it that you attempt to reclaim Disco?
The beginning of September.
And what occurs?
September came, and I called and left both of them voicemails. They did call me back from their home phone and told me they didn't approve of where I worked. They didn't approve.
Why? Where do you work?
I work at an adult novelty store.
Okay.
They didn't approve.
Why? Because that is going to affect the dog's welfare to know that she works at an adult. All right, go ahead.
Basically, my Aunt Tina says it's not going to be long before you're a prostitute when you work in an industry that sells sex novelties and toys. And I said, that's your opinion.
What was the phrase you used in your complaint? I kind of liked it. That
it's a recession-proof job. Think about it. Everybody in the world, what do we need? We need entertainment. We need food. And we need sex.
Okay.
That's just America.
So they're not
world, you know what I mean?
Well, I guess you mean sex toys, right?
Yeah, DVDs,
okay.
Magazines. It's all that. Clothes.
Okay.
It's,
All right. Okay. According to you, what's the agreement?
Okay. The agreement was, the first time that she went, we handed Disco back. The second time when she went to rehab, she walked in, she was clearly under the influence and handed me Disco and said, take care of Disco. There was no talk of giving him back or whatever. I'm not quite sure where this is coming from because when Laura went to rehab the first time, I took her Us not giving Disco back has nothing to do with where you work, Laura, at all. I love my niece very much. It's hurtful because I know what she's capable of. And because everybody in our family who has gone out of their way, I paid for her therapy. My nephew gave her a place to live for a year. Everybody who has gone out of their way to help her has gotten hurt. When she lived with my nephew, he had to ask her to leave because she was disrespectful to his marriage. In fact, I have evidence that he wrote that even when she lived with him with the dog, she didn't even take care of the dog. They took full care of the dog.
I saw that statement. So according to you, when she comes in December and hands you the dog and says, take care of the dog, she's under the influence?
Yes.
And she says, take care of Disco. There's no
says,
take care of Disco until anything.
Right.
There's just
And
take care of Disco.
Right. We heard from her once between the time she handed me Disco and September. That was Easter. My family has a huge Easter dinner, and she came to it and spent about 2 hours there. There was no discussion of her taking Disco back. So the first I heard in September, the call from her was she wanted Disco back. And I had told her that Disco was part of our family. He has a loving home. We had taken care of him financially. And during that entire 10-month period, Laura never called, never texted, never even tried to find out how Disco was doing.
I'm just curious, if from a family perspective, when you say I didn't hear from her in 9 months, did you ever call her at the rehab to see how she was doing?
No.
How come?
Because at that time, my kids were asking me why the first time I went every single Sunday. Why?
No, I don't expect you to go every single Sunday. I'm just wondering what kind of faith you had lost in her at that point where there was never any contact for 10 months.
I was hurt because the first time she got kicked out of rehab, she had been lying, and it was very hurtful.
Plaintiff had an eating disorder and substance abuse problem, so she checked into rehab and the defendants cared for her dog. And this happened several times. Let's listen.
So when you saw her in Easter, what was it like?
It was fine. She came, we hugged, we had a good time.
And she see the dog?
Yeah, she was there for 2 hours.
Did she mention at any point in time about when she wanted to take the dog back?
No, not at all.
Is your testimony different on that point or not?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
On Easter, what happened?
Easter, I had not spoken with them out of respect for my recovery. My therapist at the time told me that a lot of times triggers for me are family issues. I have issues with my mom that go back to childhood and make me want to act out in my eating disorder, which makes me want to act out in substance abuse. So when I went to Easter, it was a good time. I held the dog before I left, cried for about 20 minutes. They also stood there and cried. And I said, I can't wait till I can bring you home with me. I wish I could take you now. And I know they heard the statement along with my brother, my mom, my grandma.
Do you have any statements from any of your other relatives?
I have a letter from my dad, my mom, my brother, and the girl who I actually purchased the dog from, saying they believed that I was the one who was supposed to get the dog back once I was able to.
Let me go ahead and see the letters. Did you overhear her say, I can't wait to get you back?
No.
All right. So now it's September and you get the call, and what do you tell her?
So when she called that September day and we got back to her, we said that she had basically abandoned the dog. We'd had the dog for 10 months and that we were keeping the dog. It was part of our family. We had cared for it. We have the vet bills. And then on December 31st, I got a demand letter from her where she says that she was going to take us to court if we did not give the dog back. And I tried to send her a certified letter back to that address, and it came back as addressee not known. So I couldn't even get her a letter to let her know, no, we weren't giving it back. And
did you tell her I'm not giving the dog back?
Yes.
Yeah. And what did she say to you when you told her that?
She said it was none of my business. It was nobody's business but her own where she lives, and that it didn't matter because she was going to the court tomorrow and she was filing.
Look, what I'm concerned about, obviously, is what was the agreement between them two. Is this the dog?
Yeah, that's the dog. And on the back of that picture, that's when he's a puppy. It's got the date that picture was taken. And in that picture, he's got a little stuffed sheepy thing that I have right here. That's his stuffed animal that he eats his eyes out.
Okay, let me tell you what is not my concern. I don't really care who's a better home for Disco. Disco's a piece of property. I love dogs. I know everybody thinks it's a member of our family. This is not a child, it is a dog. And therefore, the only issue that I have in front of me is what was the agreement between the parties? Was there a clear understanding that would lead you to the fair assumption that the dog has been abandoned? And then what happens to the dog? Court's in recess.
All rise.
Welcome back to the People's Court. Harvey Levin here. So, is the dog abandoned or not after 9 months?
No.
Why do you say?
Because it's still its dog. Like, it just wasn't able to take care of it while it was away, and it asked to.
She asked.
She asked.
The dog's an it. She's a she.
She asked to take care of the dog, so.
I understand that, but after 9 months and no contact.
Well, obviously the previous owners, like if he's high on drugs, maybe you should have a dog.
Well, that's not necessarily true. I mean, people have all sorts of problems and they have dogs.
But she was sick before and now she's better, so she wants her dog back.
So she gets her dog back.
Yeah.
Even though she had no contact for 9 months.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Going inside the courtroom.
Tough one. Tough one. How are you doing, by the way?
I haven't had a drink, a drug, or non-abstinent food since I left my halfway house.
Good for you.
I go to meetings 6 days a week.
It's got to be hard to be you.
It is, you know what? And it's something I know I'm going to struggle with every single day for the rest of my life. You know, the only thing I can do for it is just do one day at a time.
Right.
And get through it and
Right.
wake up the next morning knowing that I did what I was supposed to.
Right. Well, I commend you for being able to pull yourself out of the abyss that you were in. All right, so let's talk about this. Yeah, as I said earlier, I'm not here to decide who's a better caretaker of Disco. That is not what this is about. It's a property case. And I have to decide what the understanding between the parties was. You know, you say, oh, it was that when I got out of the halfway house and got my act together, eventually, whenever that was, I could ask for the dog back. They say our understanding that was absolutely nothing because she came to our door, handed us the dog and said, take care of Disco, and went off. And we didn't hear from her, save Easter, for 9 months. So I've got to sort of look at the circumstances and decide if it's legal abandonment, as in, do you give up the rights to the property because you haven't had anything to do with the property, all right? There's no dispute about the following testimony, that from January to September, there is no talk because of whatever issues. You've made a decision that was important to your rehab not to have contact, and that's fine. But the truth is then that that's a fact, that there is no talk of the dog during that time. The most you can point to is that on Easter Day, you cuddle with the dog and say, I can't wait until the day I can take you home. You deny having heard that. That's what we have. We don't have clear understanding that the dog is going back. I don't have you sending money to them saying, this is for food for Disco. I don't have you sending money for vets for Disco. I don't have you asking to visit Disco. I don't have you asking that they bring Disco. I don't have you in any way, shape, or form other than, oh, one time I cuddled my dog and said, I can't wait till I can get you back. That's it in 9 months.
Yes, and I definitely would have compensated them if they had given me a phone call and said, you know what,
I know, but
if we're
listen,
going to continue.
if I was your aunt, I'd have called you. If I was your aunt, I would have visited you. Okay? I'm not here to decide whether she's a good aunt or a bad aunt. Okay? And I don't know the history between the two of you that might have led her to decide that she's not going to contact you. The fact that I am proud of the success you've had and that I think you would be a good owner for Disco at this point cannot come into my thinking.
Okay.
Okay? I've got to look at the actions and I got to call it. And it's really hard for me, but I just can't do it in this case. As for your counterclaim on the upkeep, of course, if I'm finding that it's your dog, it's your responsibility for the upkeep. So 0 on your counterclaim, and on your claim against them, also 0. And I find that you've relinquished your rights to the dog based on the events of those 9 months. And I really, really wish you luck.
Thank you.
Well, with difficulty, the judge rules in favor of the defendants. Come on in here, and that means you have to say goodbye to Disco.
I did everything I could. I put it in God's hands, and there's nothing more I can do. I wish him the best of luck, and I wish them the best of luck. But,
How hard is it going to be for you to go on without him?
It's definitely going to be a challenge with all my other issues I have going on, but I'm not going to let this destroy everything I worked so hard for.
Yeah. Well, you're on the right track. Maybe you could go get another dog?
No, I think I might go look into getting another family.
All right. Right down there.
Thank you.
All right, so she's obviously distraught over this. Come on in here. Was it worth it to put her through this?
We didn't put her through this. This was her doing. She already has another dog, actually, and everybody in her family loves her dearly, and we've tried very hard to help her. I paid for her therapy. I don't know what else I could have done for her, but I'm happy that Disco is in a happy, healthy home.
You won't stop trying to help her, will you?
No, but I can't support some of the things she's doing.
Let's go to Harvey.
Okay, by the way, even if the plaintiff would have won this case, small claims court judges do not have the power to order somebody to return property. That will do it for this case. Litigants for the next case on the way into the courtroom right now.